Why, hello, you amazing, beautiful people, and welcome back to another first-time reaction video. So, you have all really been enjoying these random reactions that we've been doing at the moment. I've been getting like really good feedback on them, and I really appreciate it. So, if you guys are liking these ones and you have any other videos like this you'd like me to do reactions to, let me know in that comment section down below. There's a lot of historical events and big moments in history and recent history and ages ago history that like a lot of people have asked me to check out and react to. A lot of people want me to see the new Titanic video, how the Titanic was discovered and all sorts of stuff. So let me know in the comment section because I'm really enjoying learning more about these stories I didn't know about. Now, the one we are reacting to today is, I believe, a heavy topic. I don't know much about this. This is the famous Malaysian airline flight 370 that went missing. I've never looked into this other than what was around on like major news networks when it happened. So I don't know anything about it. I know Netflix did a documentary about it a few months ago, but I never watched it. I never got round to watching it. I wanted to watch it with my wife, but we never had time. So I thought it'd be a good moment for me to check it out, and it's been recommended with all of you here. This very famous video, the Vanishing of Flight 370. So this is a genuine first-time reaction, something I really don't know anything about, other than the plane missing with the passengers on. That's it. But around it, I don't know anything. So let's watch this together. I think this is going to be quite a heavy video, so buckle up. It's going to be an emotional one. And let me know in the comment section what other videos you'd like me to react to in the future. And without more talking from me, let's jump into my first time ever reaction to the Vanishing of Flight 370.
Just let me know.
Also, I want to, before I even jump into this video, let me know is the channel that put together this video. Please go check them out. Link in the description. I'll make sure their video is nice and easy to find. So please go support them. They're the ones who made this video, so go check them out. I don't know what the copyright's around. If it has to be blurred, I'll upload the unblurred free to Patreon.
Delivery Malaysian 370, good morning.
Malaysian 370, standby.
At Kuala Lumpur International Airport, a Boeing 777 is preparing for departure.
Malaysian 370, request level.
370, we are ready, requesting flight level 350 to Beijing.
Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 is a daily passenger flight between Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia and Beijing, China.
370, 32 right of takeoff. Nice. 32 right, destination Malaysia 370,
42 minutes past midnight, Flight 370 is given clearance to depart. On board are Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, 10 cabin crew members, and 227 passengers.
Number control, Malaysian 370.
Malaysian 370, Lumpur radar, good morning. Climb flight level 250.
Morning, level 250, Malaysian 370.
Malaysian 370, climb flight level 350.
Level 350, Malaysian 370.
Less than an hour into the flight, the plane is cruising over the South China Sea at an altitude of 35,000 feet. The night sky is clear,
okay.
And the weather is calm. Flight 370 is then instructed to signal air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, as it is about to enter Vietnamese airspace. The flight controller in Kuala Lumpur says goodnight, with no sign that anything should be amiss.
Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370.
Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370. Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
1 minute and 43 seconds later, the aircraft suddenly vanish from radar screens at Kuala Lumpur, Ho Chi Minh and Bangkok. This form of
You're telling me the aircraft vanished a minute and 40 seconds after that call. The call that everything seemed fine. Literally everything seemed fine. Captain seemed fine, everything seemed cool, everything seemed normal. Minute 40 seconds later, gone.
from radar screens at Kuala Lumpur, Ho Chi Minh and Bangkok. This form of positional tracking depends on a signal being emitted by one of two transponders aboard a plane, and so its disappearance would suggest both transponders ceased to function, or the system was manually deactivated by someone on board. All subsequent attempts to contact and ascertain the whereabouts of Flight 370 are unsuccessful. The aircraft has seemingly vanished without a trace. After missing its scheduled time of arrival in Beijing some 4 hours later, Flight 370 is officially declared missing. And in the wake of that announcement, the most expensive search effort in aviation history is about to commence.
How do you lose a plane with that many people in as one of the smaller oceans?
The search was initially concentrated around the location of the flight's disappearance between the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. The search area was soon expanded, however, after the Malaysian military disclosed additional information. Unlike the radar system employed by air traffic control, long-range military radar does not rely on transponders but use reflectance to track the position of aerial targets.
Okay.
A review of the data collected by the Malaysian military revealed that moments after contact with Flight 370 was lost, the aircraft had deviated from its scheduled flight path with a subtle turn to the right, followed by a prolonged turn to the left. The aircraft had then flown back towards and across the Malaysian peninsula before turning right near the island of Penang. It maintained this northwesterly heading until it escaped the radar's coverage. Over the next few days...
What?! Is that real? That sounds incredibly suspicious. How long would a flight like that have taken? That is such an incredibly long distance. Also, how long did it take until the military revealed this information? Because the search would have happened in that space, and the military would have known that the plane wasn't there. So how long did it take for the military to say, yo, don't search there, there's no plane? Is this true? The plane went so... That is an incredible amount of distance it deviated.
Northwesterly heading until it escaped the radar's coverage.
That really suggests that someone on board would have turned off the transponders and steered the plane, right? But would have had to have done it without anyone intervening. That sounds very suspicious.
Over the next few days, the Strait of Malacca, the Andaman Sea, and the Bay of Bengal was scoured by a multinational fleet of aircraft and vessels, but there was no trace of Flight 370. Meanwhile, investigators began to analyze the aircraft's satellite communication records. Like all modern airliners, Flight 370 was equipped with a satellite communications terminal, or SATCOM, to send and receive transmissions to and from the ground. Prior to departure, the SATCOM terminal had logged onto the satellite network and established a connection with a ground station in Perth, Australia. That station then maintained a detailed record of all the incoming and outgoing traffic between it and Flight 370. This is what it contained. Prior to the flight's disappearance over the South China Sea, everything appeared to be working as intended. Then, at some point during this portion of the flight, the SATCOM link was severed. For whatever reason, the terminal ceased to respond. But 3 minutes after the flight vanished over the Andaman Sea, the terminal requested to log back onto the network. The SATCOM link was successfully re-established and was not disrupted again until nearly 6 hours later, when the flight is presumed to have crashed due to fuel exhaustion.
What the hell?
During these final hours, 2 attempts were made to contact the plane via satellite telephone. Both calls were acknowledged by the SATCOM terminal and would have been routed to the cockpit. Yet, they went unanswered. The terminal had also responded to 5 automatic status requests. In short, if the ground station had not heard from the aircraft in over an hour, it would transmit a signal to confirm the terminal was still online. While these transmissions did not contain any information about the flight's position, investigators were able to measure the distance between the satellite and the aircraft at the time of each transmission, based on how long it took those transmissions to be sent and received. This generated 7 rings of possible locations from which 7 of these transmissions are thought to have originated. By taking fuel consumption, speed, and other factors into account,
we have to just mention how incredible science is, right? Like, this is amazing. The information that they are being able to, like, collect here from all of this, from, like, the satellite, from the radar on the ground and everything like that, it kind of makes it even more terrifying that this plane was even able to vanish when they have so much data around this.
Count flight path analysis indicated the most probable origin of the final transmission to be somewhere along this arc in the southern Indian Ocean. The search effort shifted accordingly, and as the region fell within the jurisdiction of Australia, the Australian government took charge of the operation. Over the next few weeks, the search area was progressively refined to account for oceanic drift as well as improved estimations of the flight path. But this part of the southern Indian Ocean is so remote it took 6 days just to get there. A new fleet of aircraft and vessels gradually covered more than 4.5 million square kilometers of ocean, but Flight 370 was nowhere to be found.
So, just to recap on the information we've got now, the flight was... So this aircraft was going to China, turned, and traveled a completely different way. And then carried on flying for 6 hours until it ran out of fuel and crashed. Because they were able to pick up that information from the satellite. And in that time, it was contacted multiple times as well, but the calls went unanswered. They were rerouted to the cockpit but went unanswered, right? The satellite SATCOM was turned off and then turned back on 3 hours after, which is how they were able to track this information. Meaning that all the passengers, the flight attendants, the pilot, co-pilot, everybody, could not intervene with whatever was happening to the plane for that entire length of time. I, before reacting to this, was under the presumption that the plane was traveling and then vanished. And that was the location. And people were like, where's the plane? I had no idea that the plane was traveling and then traveled for 6 hours and tracked and then vanished. Wouldn't that just, as someone who doesn't know any more information, from this point, I'm thinking one of two things. I'm thinking either someone on the plane took over the plane. That's my first thought. Someone on the plane took over the plane and then flew the plane. Maybe they controlled the plane, maybe they injured the pilot, maybe they were flying the plane themselves and they didn't know the directions to go, and this is just where they started steering it. You know, if it, like a novice took over the plane, did something to the crew, locked it, and was just flying the plane around, had no idea what they were doing. Eventually they ran out of fuel and the plane crashed. That's my first guess. That's what I'm doing based off no information. Someone took over the plane, didn't know what they were doing, didn't know where they were going, and just accidentally ended up flying over the ocean. Not able to read any of the equipment, not able to read anything. That's what they did, you know? It'd be like if I took over the plane. I'm not gonna know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going, right? And just ignored radio signals. Someone with ill intent, or the captain just randomly decided to do this. I don't know why. That's why I'm thinking now about any more information.
If the impact with the ocean had been sufficiently forceful, it was possible the resulting sound had been recorded by underwater listening devices known as hydrophones. This possibility was investigated, and 4 hydroacoustic monitoring stations had recorded something. While the timing and direction of the sound were reasonably consistent with the final satellite transmission,
That's quite terrifying, isn't it? That those exist and they pick sound up in the ocean.
The estimated origin was not. The sound was in all likelihood caused by nothing more than geological activity. Flight 370 was also equipped with 2 underwater locator beacons which had a battery life of some 40 days, and as the deadline approached in early April, signals with a pulse and frequency somewhat similar to the signal emitted by the beacons were detected at depths of up to 3,000 meters. An autonomous submersible then spent weeks scanning the seafloor where the signals had been detected, but no wreckage was ever found.
How's that possible?
And nothing would be found until more than
How's that possible? Did I miss something there? Signals with a pulse frequency somewhat similar to signals emitted by the beacons. These beacons had a battery life of 40 days, deadline approached in April. So what could they be then, those signals? This is a very interesting video.
and nothing would be found until more than 16 months later, when a discovery was made on the opposite side of the Indian Ocean. On the 29th of July 2015, a group of people were cleaning up a beach in Reunion, a small island to the east of Madagascar, when they stumbled upon this 2-meter-long metallic object covered in barnacles. Aviation experts quickly identified the object as a section of an aircraft wing known as a flaperon. Upon closer inspection, internal markings including dates and serial numbers conclusively ascertained the flaperon belonged to Flight 370. Even though Reunion Island is some 4,000 kilometers west of the search area, and more than a year had gone by since the flight disappeared, the location was consistent with simulations of debris dispersal patterns. There was now tangible evidence that Flight 370 had crashed somewhere in the Indian Ocean. The discovery of the flaperon prompted numerous searches along beaches and shorelines of southeastern Africa, and at least 31 additional items of interest have since been recovered and examined. Some of these items include a section of the outboard flap from the right wing, a piece of cowling from one of the 2 engines, a partial door from the nose landing gear, a section of the vertical stabilizer, and a mangled casing from one of the embedded headrest monitors. 18 of these items were identified as either likely, highly likely, or almost certain to have originated from Flight 370, whereas only 3 could be confirmed. The remaining 11 could not be identified. There were no traces of an explosion found on any of the debris tested, nor was there any evidence of a fire except for 3 small burn marks on one of the unidentifiable items. The search for debris was further aided by Earth observation satellites. Analyses of satellite imagery from March of 2014 uncovered a number of images which appear to feature man-made objects floating on or just below the surface in the southern Indian Ocean. However, the images were not nearly sharp enough to resolve any identifiable markings, and multiple searches notwithstanding, this debris was never recovered. A satellite image taken mere hours after the final transmission also captured what appeared to be a contrail some distance away from the search area. A later analysis, however, concluded it was most likely a shadow from a somewhat linear cloud formation.
I'm not sure what is a contrail. I don't mean to sound like an idiot. I'm not sure what that is. Is a contrail like the idea of a plane banking or something like that, like the wings and the and the plane? This is terrifying, by the way. Like, absolutely terrifying. Because I'm just imagining, let's say, hypothetically speaking, this plane just went down. It flew for like over 6 hours before it went down. The people were on that plane. That's the scariest part. But then, the Indian Ocean is home to not only rough water, but also a lot of dangerous creatures. You know, a lot of dangerous sea life. It's not so it's like terrifying to think, not only with this plane crashing, but the water conditions being a bit more on the harsher side. Although they did say it was calm weather, so maybe it was calm waters. But the crash would have happened early morning. Basically, what I'm trying to say is survivors would have a very slim chance of surviving, which is even sadder.
The underwater portion of the search continued for months and eventually years before it was finally suspended in early 2017, by which point some 120,000 square kilometers of seabed had been scrutinized. The search effort was then resumed by an American salvage company known as Ocean Infinity, but after more than a year of searching, they too came up empty-handed. Unless the final resting place of Flight 370 can be located, it may be impossible to determine exactly why it crashed. Nevertheless, there have been no shortage of theories.
I actually saw there was an update on the situation 4 months ago, or recently, but I'm not sure what it is. I don't know anything about it. Let's see what the theories are.
On the day of the disappearance, 2 of the passengers raised suspicion as they had boarded the flight with stolen passports, which immediately prompted concerns of a hijacking. But investigators were unable to link the 2 men to any terrorist organizations, and soon determined they had traveled under false identities because they were seeking asylum, not due to any nefarious intent. Similar suspicions were raised when one of the passengers were identified as a flight engineer who might have possessed the necessary expertise to take control of a Boeing 777. Apart from the 239 persons on board, Flight 370 carried nearly 11 metric tons of cargo. Among the items listed on the flight manifest was a shipment of lithium-ion batteries, which led some to suspect a fire might have broken out mid-flight. For instance, the crash of UPS Airlines Flight 6 in September of 2010 was the result of a fire that was ignited by a pallet of lithium-ion batteries. Another potential source of ignition would be an electrical malfunction. The crash of Swiss Air Flight 111 in September of 1998 is thought to have been caused by a fire within the electrical wiring above the cockpit. The fire damaged and disabled multiple avionics systems, including the transponders and SATCOM. In the case of Flight 370, the sudden loss of communication and subsequent deviation from its scheduled flight path might have been a direct response to a fire. The two pilots may have turned back towards Malaysia to attempt an emergency landing at the nearest suitable airport. But no such attempt was ever made. Instead, Flight 370 kept going and remained aloft for another 6 hours. Some have theorized the crew might have been incapacitated by a sudden or gradual loss of cabin pressure. For instance, when Helios Airways Flight 522 failed to pressurize in August of 2005, the pilots quickly fell unconscious. Yet the aircraft continued to fly on autopilot for more than 2 hours until it ran out of fuel. Airlines
I don't know any. I'm gonna say this right now. I don't know anything about aviation workings or anything like that. I did work in the maritime industry, so I know a fair bit about ships and shipping paths and how they work and navigation software for 4 years. But when it comes to planes, I don't know anything. I don't, as a random person with no knowledge, don't like any of those theories, but I don't know nothing. So I just wanted to point out that I don't know anything. But I don't like any of those theories. It just seems weird that the plane would continue to fly for over 6 hours, changing direction multiple times, and calls would constantly go unanswered, and the entire crew, passengers, everybody didn't do anything. Not one of them picked up the thing for over 6 hours. I don't feel like that would suggest to me that there wasn't a fire, there wasn't any damage, because why would the plane travel for that long? It really leans towards foul play. If there was a fire or some sort of damage, why wouldn't they reply to the answers? It doesn't make any sense. And a fire went on for that long, but the plane stayed in the air? I don't understand.
2005, the pilots quickly fell unconscious. Yet the aircraft continued to fly on autopilot.
What did they say?
The pilots quickly fell unconscious. 522 failed to pressurize in August of 2005.
Failed to pressurize.
The pilots quickly fell unconscious.
Okay.
Yet the aircraft continued to fly on autopilot for more than 2 hours until it ran out of fuel. Airline pilots are of course trained for such an event. In the event of cabin depressurization, an automatic system is designed to deploy oxygen masks to give the pilots enough time to perform an emergency descent to a more breathable altitude. The data recorded by the Malaysian military radar does indeed contain altitude information, but it is highly inconsistent. In fact, the Boeing 777 is incapable of performing the extreme altitude fluctuations recorded. At one point, the aircraft exceeded its maximum operating altitude by more than 15,000 feet, before making a 50,000 feet nosedive in less than a minute. Attempts to recreate these maneuvers on a flight simulator were unsuccessful, and thus the data was deemed inaccurate and unreliable. If Flight 370 did lose cabin pressure at 35,000 feet, and the pilots were incapacitated before descending to a more oxygenated altitude, it might explain why the aircraft remained aloft for as long as it did. What is a bit more difficult to explain, however, are these alterations in heading. Flight simulations have established the aircraft must have been under manual control during the initial left turn, as the bank angle or inclination of that turn was beyond the limits of the autopilot. Subsequent turns, however, could have been either manual or automatic. But for the autopilot to have made these course corrections, someone with the requisite knowledge must have programmed it to do so. The only other alternative is that the aircraft was in fact under manual control.
So there you go, someone was awake in the cockpit. Let's have a look, what's this? chief suspect, pilot, chief suspect, captain of missing flight identified as prime suspect. The captain?
In late June of 2014, several news outlets reported that a special investigation had identified the captain of Flight 370 as a prime suspect.
This goes with, like I said, my theories are just based off the information I'm being given here today, so please don't take any weight to them. I don't know anything, and I'm basing it off very loose information. 15 minutes of video footage. But for me, there's two options. The captain did something. Maybe the captain was in a very depressed state and acted weirdly and was being negotiated with for a long period of time, and that's what happened, you know? People are trying to talk the captain down. That's possible, right? My second theory was a hijacking. Those are the two things that make the most sense with the plane's angles, its continued trajectory. I still feel like it... I don't know. You know, at 35,000 feet, would you see the land below you? Why would you fly over the land? So that's another thing. Let's say a novice had taken control of the plane and they were just flying the plane around. What would be their reasoning behind this? And if they can't work out, but they were over the sea, but they weren't always over the sea, you know? Because I was wondering if they were just lost over the sea, but they went over land first. Would they have been able to see that land? It would have been quite late at night, however. That's a good point too.
Search of the captain's home and uncovered a flight simulator which supposedly contained a suspicious route which ended in the southern Indian Ocean. At the time, there was no official acknowledgement that such a route had been recovered, and a lengthy public report issued by the Malaysian government in 2015 made no mention of such a discovery. Then, in 2016, confidential documents pertaining to a forensic examination conducted by the Royal Malaysia Police in May of 2014 was leaked to the media. These documents made it clear that such a route had not only been recovered, but thoroughly examined. Soon thereafter, the Malaysian government confirmed the existence of this simulated flight path, and this is what it looks like. It should come as no surprise that many regard this as damning evidence of premeditation, but
I mean... that is a bit fucking suspicious, don't you think?
according to investigators, it is not quite so evident. The data recovered consists of 7 coordinates, 2 in Kuala Lumpur, 2 in the Strait of Malacca, 1 in the Bay of Bengal, and 2 in the southern Indian Ocean. The data was reconstructed from a file that had been automatically generated and saved by the simulation software a month before the incident. However, it's not clear whether the coordinates originate from the same flight session. In other words, it might not be correct to simply trace a continuous line between these 7 coordinates, as they could be from separate sessions. The forensic examination by the Royal Malaysia Police simply concluded no activity captured conclusively indicate any kind of premeditated act pertaining to the incident of MH370.
Wait a second. Am I correct? Someone let me know. Because that looks incredibly suspicious. Are they saying that they basically... It was like a dot to dot. And they found these multiple dots, and then they drew a line between them, which looked like that. However, they are saying that these dots could have all been different flight simulated sessions. And therefore, there's no evidence that it was a planned continuous line when all of these dots could be simulated flight sessions. The only thing that seems suspicious is the random ones in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Why would they even be there to begin with?
Even so, the similarities between the simulated route and the presumed route of Flight 370 directly influenced the search operation. Australian investigators considered the possibility of someone deliberately extending the range of the flight by gliding the aircraft off the fuel exhaustion. If so, the plane could have traveled an additional 200 kilometers. Alternatively, the range could have been reduced by a controlled ditching prior to fuel exhaustion, while ultimately...
But how would that correlate with the debris that is popping up as well? Wouldn't the debris have to, couldn't you use the debris' location to showcase where it should be coming from as well? Like where the plane could have crashed?
Deemed unlikely, these 2 scenarios did affect the search effort. If the captain steered Flight 370 off course with the intention of crashing in a remote part of the southern Indian Ocean, his motive is an even greater mystery. Zahari Ahmad Shah was 53 and married with 3 children. He had more than 18,000 hours of flight experience and a spotless track record. Investigators found no evidence of financial issues, and his monthly expenses before the disappearance indicated nothing unusual. He had no history of mental illness, nor had he displayed any recent changes in lifestyle or behavior. He was raised on the island of Penang, which has led some to speculate the flight's second turn to the southwest of Penang was the captain getting a final view of his hometown. Some believe a hijacking could have been politically motivated, as Sahari was an avid supporter of a democratic opposition leader who was sentenced to 5 years in prison mere hours before Flight 370 took off. Others point to unconfirmed reports of marital issues, but this is contradicted by the official investigation and disputed by family members. The only real inconsistency noted by the final report is that the captain failed to repeat the assigned radio frequency during the last verbal communication.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
It would have been standard procedure to repeat the assigned frequency, as the captain had correctly done a few minutes prior.
Randomly curious about this. Had he ever done this before? I'm assuming that a lot of the flight control conversations are recorded. Could they not go back and check for his loved ones and see if this slip-up has happened before?
370, contact Lampu Radar 1326, good night.
Alright, 1326 Malaysian 370.
Whether this omission is indicative of anything but a mistake is anyone's best guess. By all accounts, Captain Sahari was an affable and well-respected pilot who was passionate about aviation, as evident by the photos and videos he shared on social media.
Hi everyone, this is a YouTube video that I made as a community service after learning.
The co-pilot was found to be even less conspicuous. Farik Abdul Hamid was only 27, and due to marry a fellow pilot, he had nearly 3,000 hours of flight experience, although only 39 hours in this type of aircraft. Much like Sahari, Farik had no financial, mental or interpersonal issues of note, nor was there any evidence of conflict between the two of them. Some questioned the plausibility of a pilot-instigated hijacking due to the apparent lack of interference by the other pilot. Well, when Ethiopian Airlines Flight 702 was hijacked by the co-pilot in February of 2014, he did so by merely waiting for the captain to take a bathroom break before locking the cockpit door behind him. The co-pilot was then free to divert the Italy-bound flight to Switzerland to seek asylum. The only noteworthy piece of evidence in regards to the co-pilot of Flight 370 is his phone. You see, when the confidential documents were leaked, they also confirmed another long-circulated rumor, namely that a cell phone tower had briefly established a connection with an iPhone 5S belonging to the co-pilot as Flight 370 approached the island of Penang.
It's amazing how much happened. Like, so much happened. So much tracking and technology, so much information is gathered. But the bottom line is, if a plane just goes down in the middle of an ocean, any ocean, surely it's going to be next to impossible to discover. Has this happened before? Have other planes just vanished, or is this the first time?
According to investigators, it was not a phone call as has been widely reported by the media, but merely an automatic location signal. Why this information was omitted from public reports, we may never know.
Yeah, that's very weirdly suspicious.
So what is one to make of all of this? On the one hand, the simulated flight path seems suspicious.
It very
On
much
the other,
does.
it is difficult to cast any substantial doubt on either of the two pilots' character. It is equally difficult to deny a hijacking is consistent with the available evidence. Then again, we're missing some quite major and literal pieces of evidence. The final report issued by the Malaysian government in 2018 could not attribute the loss of communication nor diversion of Flight 370 to a malfunction. Instead, it is believed that someone manually manipulated the aircraft and its systems. For instance, investigators believe SATCOM was manually disabled by a sudden and prolonged interruption of power. Then, once power was restored, the terminal simply rebooted. Likewise, the alterations in head...
A sudden interruption of power? What could possibly cause that? Was someone turning off the plane or something? But then once it was turned back on, why wasn't communication re-established? You know what is interesting? The plane's trajectory. You know what else is actually really sad? That this video doesn't even point out? Is just how many people lost their lives on this. kind of like, I know this video is more focused on the missing, but these are real people, and it's absolutely heartbreaking how many people lost their lives on this and how many people it must have affected. But what I want to say was interesting is when the plane lost connection, it was already like over the ocean, right? The plane lost connection, it was over the ocean, and then regained connection, which would play into my theory that someone who didn't know how to properly fly the plane was controlling it. And then when they were over the ocean, they simply turned and maybe were looking for land, and they figured if they just keep going in one direction, they'll find it. But yeah, maybe someone hijacked the plane, and then something happened which caused an electrical malfunction, at which point someone else gained control of the plane but didn't know what they were doing. But then why did they not answer the calls?
Are believed to be the result of manual inputs. With that being said, the uncertainty of these findings are repeatedly emphasized due to the limited evidence available, and the report does never explicitly state the flight was hijacked. In fact, no real conclusion is reached. Both the Malaysian and Australian government agree that Flight 370 crashed in the southern Indian Ocean, but that the cause is indeterminable without the wreckage, the location of which has managed to elude some of the foremost aviation experts in the world, as well as an impressive arsenal of cutting-edge technology for more than half a decade. Authors, aviation experts, and independent investigators have all chimed in to offer their own thoughts and theories as to the nature of the crash and the location of the wreckage. Some believe there was no crash, but that the aircraft was shot down by an American naval base in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The satellite transmissions were then supposedly forged as part of a massive cover-up. Others believe the aircraft turned right towards India and traveled as far north as Kazakhstan, completely undetected. Debris was then supposedly planted along shorelines of southeastern Africa as part of a massive cover-up. Another theory suggests the aircraft was remotely hijacked and controlled by someone on the ground. While Boeing and other companies have experimented with technology that would allow for an aircraft to be remotely controlled, no commercial airliner is known to be outfitted with such a system.
Again, based off of the information I've been given through this video, I would simply say that's not what happened. It does sound like the flight crashed in the ocean. I think the debris is consistent with the wash-up as well, but I don't know enough, so please understand I don't know what I'm talking about here. But yeah, it sounds like the flight did indeed crash in the ocean, and it is an ocean investigation. The ocean is big and very hard to traverse, and a big metal object would be hard to find in the ocean, any ocean. It would take an incredible amount of resources and time, and it's easy for people to make mistakes and miss things as well when they're doing this, even professionals. So it would just take ages. It would simply just take ages. And if they haven't found it now, I'd be surprised if they ever do.
On the less
sadly.
conspiratorial side, the assumption that Flight 370 flew in a straight line and at a constant speed after turning left towards the southern Indian Ocean might simply be incorrect. In early 2018, a French team of independent investigators proposed an alternate flight path, whereby an attempted landing on Christmas Island led to a crash site much further north than the region identified by the official investigation. While a surface search of this area was conducted about a week after the disappearance, the underwater phase never reached this far north. As of the making of this video, the search operation has been suspended, but there have been talks of potentially resuming the search. For now, it seems, the vanishing of Flight 370 will remain a mystery.
Shout out this channel. Shout out this channel. The channel is called Let Me Know. Let Me Know. Incredibly well done video, absolutely outstanding. I am going to leave a link to this channel in the description. I will try and make it the pinned comment on this video as well. Go support this channel. What an absolutely wonderfully well done video. Amazing channel. What a utterly terrifying incident. Absolutely terrifying. Even thinking about the fact that simply we did not even acknowledge the fact that these are people, or their families, everyone who lost these people, and how heartbreakingly awful all of that is as well. Even taking that out of all of this, this is just it's just a terrifying situation, right? It's utterly terrifying. The idea that this plane completely vanished, that these parts have been... This is the issue with the world today, however, is everyone loves a conspiracy theory. I wouldn't say the world today, because it's been everyone's loved conspiracy theories forever, right? Everyone loves to theorize. Everyone loves to come up with their own ideas and their own 2 cents. The bottom line is someone is right. Someone out there knows. Someone out there's come up with a theory that is correct. And it hasn't been listened to. Someone, right? But yeah, sometimes those theories can really hinder an operation. You have seen it in some cases where they work. Sometimes they don't. There is a video that I am being recommended that was published 4 months ago called A New Trace. So I am curious, is there any update? Is there any potential of this flight ever being located, or is that it? Is it simply just never going to be found? Is it gone and that is it? There's no way of ever finding this flight. I didn't know anything about this other than the flight disappeared. Up until the recording this video, my information on this was that there had been a flight full of passengers that vanished, and that it just vanished. That was what I thought. This is the first time I've been presented with any of this information, and I had no idea about the changes of course and trajectory, the continued attempts of communication, and the extended period of flight length. This is crazy. So was there no other active planes around this that could have potentially seen the plane? And I'm guessing, are there no other theories? Because for me, based on the information, it seems fairly... The one thing that's interesting is the plane continued in a straight line. Which, if that is the case, that seems suspicious, right? That may be in line with people being unconscious. But people being unconscious for that long? That seems suspicious, right? Or does it not? Would no one regain consciousness? If there was something that made everyone... But then again, every single passenger as well, even with the masks, remaining unconscious for that long, unless a passenger was able to somehow gain control of the plane, but then why would no one steer it? It maintained a straight line trajectory. That's suspicious as well, right? If you were searching for something, why would you continue in a straight line? There's so much that is suspicious about this. No one attempted to take over the plane, regain control, change location, contact anybody. The plane seamlessly remained in control of someone on board in a straight line for that long, and that is it. I just find that really hard to believe. The French investigation that they mentioned there at the end sounds a lot more likely. I much prefer that than the idea of this plane just staying in one line and no one intervening. The idea of it attempting to re-land makes sense. Because then I would say something happened to professional pilots on the plane. Someone without any experience took over. After maybe there was an incident on board. Maybe something happened. Someone took over. Someone hijacked it. After something, someone else regained control of the plane. Maybe at that point, something had happened to the pilots. And then this person attempted a re-landing, which would explain why they would have turned that direction, maybe landing on Christmas Island or something near it. And then that's what happened, something like that. But honestly, this is all just speculation, and I have no clue. Anyone who knows any more information about this, please feel free to share it in the comments section down below. But other than that, this is where the video ends. If you guys have any more information, if you guys have anything you want to tell me, but also if you have any other videos you'd like me to do reactions to, please let me know. I'm more than happy checking out videos like this. I find them incredibly interesting, and I enjoy watching them with you all. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this reaction video. Have yourselves an incredible day. Link to the channel, again, let me know, is in the description. Go check them out. And as always, my friends, you will see me in the next video.